Hello my friends, this is Jeremy from Lansego. Today we're going to be discussing a deck that puts the wham back in whammy. This list is akin to an archetype that has been floating around in some form or another since Alpha, the big, mean green machine. The meta for War of the Spark has been telling us we need to play Esper Control or Esper Hero. The meta is telling us that we need to be playing Jeskai Planeswalkers or Grixis Control. The meta is telling us only mono red or blue-white aggro will do, and I'm here to tell you today, the meta is wrong. Green is still here, folks, and if your playstyle is crash the boards with more aggro than any control deck can possibly hope to contend with, then I highly recommend you find your box of green colored cardboard and get to turning some creatures sideways. How does the mono green archetype separate itself in terms of performance in most cases? That's right, you guessed it, Ramp. Well, Ramp and Nissa. Nissa Who Shakes the World has my attention. This rare planeswalker from War of the Spark is pure gasoline, high octane, high speed, low drag. The more I play this planeswalker, the more I am certain that she will be a continuous staple in Standard until her rotation. She is essentially a mana flare for forest cards, dual lands included. Doubling our mana resources in a mono green deck is easily abused. As you will see, there are ways to further exploit this additional mana production, but we aren't focusing on those. No, we're going straight to the chin here. Nissa's static ability is sick, but her ability to turn your lands into 3/3 creatures with haste and vigilance is gross. Being able to get 2 green mana from a land, untap it, make it a 3/3, and potentially attack or defend is monumental to the success I've been having with this list. Llanowar Elves makes an appearance here in our deck as a full set. Any green machine in need of nitrous would do well to include 4 copies of this ancient wonder. The Say Go portion of Lansego in this case is all about pedal to the metal. We want to be off to the races quickly as many times as possible. In order to satisfy our need for speed, we're also running 3 copies of Druid of the Cowl, a reliable mana nerd with a fat bottom that can see to it that we are increasing our chances of 5 green mana on turn 3. A dangerous scenario for our opponents. Steel Leaf Champion feels like an obvious include for any mono green list in Standard, so we're running 3 copies. We can reliably pressure life totals due to blocking restrictions, and we should exploit that. When we can skirt around the tokens our opponents are producing with Saheeli and swat her down, we should exploit that. Not to mention, as you will see in a few moments, Steel Leaf can produce some terrifying combat scenarios in combination with our God Eternal Ronus. Nullhide Ferox at 2 copies is that good friend who will bail you out. That good old reliable beater on turn 3 who forces your opponent to use critical mana resources and removal spells to answer him or else be on a 4-turn clock. Generally speaking, Nullhide Ferox on turn 3 produces game-winning scenarios for us. His "you can't cast non-creature spells" is problematic, but we are swinging in with him every turn. We want him to trade off for 2 or 3 creatures on a non-equitable block for our opponents. We can recur him late game with some trickery and get right back to beating face. Biogenic Ooze is just one of the many force majeure cards in our list when coupled with Nissa Who Shakes the World. We are running 3 copies, and this is scary, boys and girls. I mean it. When we have a Resolve Nissa and we are getting the Mana Flare style effect from our forests, we can just crank out Ooze tokens at a totally obscene rate. Each one of them gets a counter at our end step, and ending your turn with untapped mana gives your opponent a cause for pause, or should, if they are thinking about swinging in damage during combat. Oh boy, God Eternal Ronus. Undead Ronus isn't quite as glorious as the Amonkhet version, Ronus the Indomitable, but then again, we are never really as good dead as we are alive, are we? At any rate, Ronus in combination with our mono green creature plan can be devastating. If our opponent is relying on tokens to try and pull off blocks for our bigger creatures, we can sink 10 damage with our Steel Leaf Champions. The longer game with our Biogenic Ooze can produce devastating combat steps by doubling power. Ronus itself is a 5/5 Death Touch creature that cannot be reliably dispatched once it's on the battlefield, as it simply returns to our deck, 3rd from the top, and gives us a chance to recur the power doubling trigger time and again. My excitement in including a full playset of Carnage Tyrant barely exceeds my disappointment with mentioning that the meta seems to have forgotten about this badass dinosaur. Sure, there are tons of sacrifice effects out there these days, but a massive hexproof creature with trample that can't be countered cannot be forgotten. Let's just imagine a world where we cast Ronus with a Carnage Tyrant on the battlefield ready to swing. 14 damage trample? Where do we go wrong? tapping 3 forests for this creature with an active Nissa on curve? Yes, please. Just trust me here. Carnage Tyrant can and still does get the job done. Adventurous Impulse was great for mono green, and I toyed with keeping things fairly status quo for this list, but Bond of Flourishing is just too good to pass up. It's hard to turn down 3 life points, and the fact that the spell virtually never misses in our list, well, we're running 4 copies. My only recommendation would be to hold them for mid-game refills or traction when necessary. I like using these sorcery spells to stabilize, but it can absolutely feel bad when we miss a plane-wide celebration and send it to the bottom of the library. Nissa's Triumph belongs in a Nissa Who Shakes the World deck. This card, in accompaniment with our mana nerds, makes it so we are never really in danger of missing our curve. New Nissa turns our lands into creatures, and given the fundamental laws of Magic, we should expect that our creatures will die from time to time. So it becomes of paramount importance, 1, that we always have a handful of forests, and 2, that we relax about the prospect of losing our lands when they are turned into creatures. It's going to happen, and that is what the Mana Flare is all about with Nissa. We are avoiding the feels bad man moment of losing our lands to removal or sweeps and consistently replacing them on the battlefield with Nissa's Triumph, a relentless and powerful land tutor. I hope you've grown a mustache lately, or at least have a hairy upper lip, because we have saved some flavor and you will need a flavor saver for this next card. Plane-wide Celebration is a total commander card, right? Wrong. Yes, it's easily countered. Sure, it's 7 mana to cast, but both of those issues don't matter. Am I trolling you with this inclusion? Surprisingly, no. With these 2 copies, we get to choose 4 modes when casting this card, and we can choose one of the modes up to 4 times, so we can create 2/2 spectrum-colored citizen tokens. Aww. How cute. We can regrowth permanent cards from our graveyard to our hand in droves, which given the prevalence of board wipes and our aggro strategy can be absolutely disgusting. We can gain obscene amounts of life if we are in a race. More importantly though, we can proliferate, and we can do it up to 4 times. We can resolve a Nissa and next turn celebrate to ultimate her. An active ooze with a couple of tokens and counters makes for some awfully big corpse-hungry slimes. This card is underrated, folks. I'd buy as many copies of it as you can while they are cheap. Nissa can't go it alone. We need additional defenses from enchantments, artifacts, and flyers main board. Vivian Reed is well worth the money spent, believe me. She can help us tutor out creatures and lands. Hey, that's pretty good. She can destroy various permanent types, artifacts, creatures with flying, and enchantment, of the problematic variety, of which there are plenty, and her emblem in combination with a Nissa Ultimate is incredibly demoralizing for any opponent. Of course, that circumstance exists only in Magic Christmas Land, but I'm the head elf of the workshop, and Vivian Reed comes in at 2 copies main board. Lands are pretty simple here. We're running 24 of them, all of them are forests. As we move into the sideboard for this deck, I want to stress just how fun this list is to actually play. I love super simple decks. I love lists that are monocolored. I love lists that play their game, that force our opponents to react to what we are doing, not the other way around. We do have options in our sideboard that change our plan of attack, add some layers, and can help us become more resistant or resilient. Finale of Devastation at 2 copies is perfect. I feel like dropping the plane-wide Celebration in favor of these 2 copies of the green Finale is right here. It helps us be more aggressive. It helps us become directly recursive and more aggressive. Where once there was a fairly passive and docile spell in plane-wide Celebration, we are ratcheting up the game plan for game 2 to be able to alpha strike our opponents in several ways. Thrash specifically, of Thrash Threat combination card, is great for Planeswalker control and smushing creatures. I'm not 100% sold on this inclusion, but having the Planeswalker removal has been outstanding in my testing games. I never thought I would see the day where Naturalize got an upgrade, but it has. Return to Nature is a strictly better instant speed artifact and enchantment removal spell with the added upside of being able to exile a card from a graveyard, which in this meta we want to have as an option. We run a full set of this great card. Its uses are obvious: Iskanta, Wilderness Reclamation, Rhythm of the Wild, the list goes on. 3 copies of Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger. Giving us the ability to cast our creatures at instant speed is superb. Let's imagine being able to flash in Aronis, double our power, and get a Death Touch 5/5 on the battlefield when our opponent foolishly swings in. Also, this Vivian helps us hide resources in exile that can be cast at any time we could cast an instant. It avoids hand destruction, and gives you flexibility. These copies slot in over other walkers or Steel Leaf Champion. Optimally, we run one additional copy of Biogenic Ooze for a full commitment to being slimy, another copy of God Eternal Ronus to bump up our access to the alpha swings he provides. I generally like to bring in Ronus and Vivien Champion of the Wilds together. It can be disgusting to see our opponent elect to not block combat damage trying to get to their next turn, flash in a Ronus, and kill them outright. One more Vivien Reid for support. I generally drop a Tyrant or Plane-Wide Celebration for Vivien when her tutor capabilities and removal are needed. And that's it. This deck is fun, folks. I've been testing so much for Magic Fest Kansas City lately that my immersion into the competitive meta has gotten in the way of playing Brews. And while this is just an updated version of the green beatdown archetype, this deck makes me smile. Hopefully it brings a smile to your face as well. Please click that subscribe button here on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at LanceGo1, and join us for conversations at www.lancego.com. You can also join the Sideboard group, an open community on Facebook, and we appreciate you watching this video. We can't do it without you.